another one of your posts that I think I saw on your GitHub site was you were talking about continuous design and the importance of continuous design. That's a topic that's very close to my heart. So could you talk a little bit about that as well and your thinking on that?
So I think it's also goes to this idea of XP and refactoring and
Yeah,
refactoring being a continuous activity instead of the scheduled one that we create a ticket in whatever
yeah,
tool that we're using and then scheduling for that, but having it as a way to as a continuous activity and doing it all the time. And I think also the design is another of these topics where also the way of working also allows for that, in a sense that I'll connect it again to ways of working or to PRML programming. But when you reduce the cost of code reviews to zero, then you get to be able to do smaller changes more often. So you get to refactor the code not when it's not expensive, which is usually throwing the things over the wall, but whenever you want,
yes,
because it's zero, right? And then because of that, you have all of these very small changes that you're able, extract the method, extract variable,
yes,
extract parameter, etc., move the thing to a collaborator. And this emergent design kind of happens as a result of that, because you're able to make small steps and keep the contextual awareness along the path to see where the code is taking you, in a sense, instead of when you have a high cost of code review, so to say, or these high transaction costs, which is not only about code review, but other things when we work in isolation, then we start trying to predict the things more upfront, right? And then
yes,
we spend in an analysis part way longer than otherwise. So the question is, how do we reduce all these costs so we can do this activity continuously, and we can also get to a design that is empirically proven, so to say, rather than the one that we think should be, and then trying to match the reality with that. So the kind of working together and continuous refactoring and being very in tune with the code, trying to understand what it's trying to tell you, all of the pain points that you get to discover, and then addressing those as you go, and getting to a point where the design takes you to where it wants to be, instead of you saying what kind of a design it should be. So it's kind
yes,
of a bit of a different take on a design, I would say, than what they get to see usually. I often don't ever think about design, what it should be, or should this thing be a whatever strategy pattern or whatever. I just take small steps, reduce all of the costs around me, of involving other people to chip in as well, and we get to follow the path that this thing is kind of discovering for us, in a sense. So
yeah,
yeah, I think there's that's really interesting thing about XP. It's very hard to take one thing, one practice
yes,
out and just try to do it. Maybe TDD, or maybe that's one of the things. But for example, if you try to do refactoring, small steps, continuous refactoring, if you have high cost of code review, it's not going to happen, because you're
yeah,
going to patch the changes. You're not going to do small steps. But there's so much, the practices are so coherent. I don't even know how Ken came up with those as a set, but I like
yes,
just analyzing them from all of these angles, theory of constraints, lean systems thinking, etc. They fall into place so strongly. It's like a
yes.
hair. You try to pull one thing, all the others also come with it. So there's a very strong cohesion between these practices that, yeah, you can connect a lot of the dots between them.
But no, I agree. I agree entirely. My favorite diagram from the Extreme Programming book is the one where all of the practices are There's this kind of spider's web of interrelationships between all of the practices, because they all reinforce one another. That was a very insightful thing. And as you say, again, though it looks to me like the fruits of evolution. It's the kind of stuff that it looks to me like something that evolved pragmatically from, as you described it, solving one problem at a time, and you end up in this place. Um, and that's also how we build any complex system. That's how we build. That's how we build our software, as well as building our development process, I guess. So trying stuff out, seeing what's worked, keeping the stuff that doesn't. It seems to me that profoundly, the difference between the approaches to development that you and I would promote and that we talk about versus the more traditional approaches. The more traditional approaches start off assuming that we have to get things right at the beginning. We start off assuming that whatever we do is going to be wrong, it seems to me, in profound ways. And so we work in ways that allow us to be wrong safely and easily and correct it when we find it. And we can find where we're wrong as quickly as we can.
Yeah.
And it
Having
seems that
is really important.
Yeah. And that seems like a very deep and very profound change in the way of thinking that also underpins ideas like lean thinking and systems engineering and so on, to my mind, and fundamentally science, which is why I think we can genuinely call this a full-blown engineering approach. It's a genuine first-class engineering discipline. If you do this, you will get a better outcome. And there's not much else you can say that about in software development, I don't think.
I mean, I'm open for discovering other ways of working, definitely, but
Always.
until I find those, it's very hard to find anything better currently, at least for me.
Yeah. So I guess, as you say, the practices are too interlinked to be able to tease them apart. But I guess most closely at the core of my belief is the idea of continuous integration, and lots of the other ideas flow from that, including evolutionary design and test-driven development and all those kinds of things to give you the feedback that you need in order to be able to practice continuous integration. But if somebody turned up tomorrow with something that worked as well as or better than continuous integration without its downsides, I would do that. It's not a religion for me. It's about what works better, and continuous integration is the best that we have, in my view.
Yes, likewise.
Yeah, interesting. I've come to the belief that quality, the only definition of quality in code that makes any sense is our ability to change the code. If it's easy to change, it's high quality. If it's hard to change, it's not. And I'm coming increasingly to the, I don't really have heroes, but I'm coming increasingly to the belief that when Kent Beck called Extreme Programming Explained, the subtitle was Embrace Change, he was a genius. It means more to me every year, that idea of embracing change, because that's fundamentally what it's about. It's getting to this idea of, let's assume that we're gonna screw up or the world's going to change, and we're going to work in a way that we can carry on making good progress, even though that's true.
I think it's the whole idea of it is admitting that we're going to have a change continuously, and that reality is going to change continuously, and then adapting to that, instead of trying to force again reality into it shouldn't change as much, or we shouldn't change environment, or whatever is the case. So which is kind of reductionist thinking, going back to systems thinking and understanding that there is this inherent quality or attribute of reality which is going to change. So how do you go about that, and how do you reduce the cost of that in order to be able to adapt this as soon as possible?
It always amuses me a little when I speak to teams and they say, we'd be doing fine if only the users or the business knew what they wanted. Nobody knows what they want. That's the problem. That's our job. Our job is to find out what they want, and they don't know. So we've got to discover it.
Yeah, it's full-blown discovery process.
It is. Yeah. I think we're probably approaching the end of our time. It's been a pleasure discussing things with you so far. Is there anything that you'd like to add that we haven't touched on or talked about? I've got one. Another quote to you from one of your things is you did a little post about the on-time obsession.
Oh yes.
Which I think is apposite for what we were just talking about.
Yes. Yeah, this whole idea about, this famous triangle of, quality and scope and time, etc. And I think this thing about, it's again admitting that you cannot control reality, because this idea of on time is actually trying to get to control the reality, so to say.
Yeah.
To say that all the things are going to go with the plan that we think it should go. And if it doesn't go, everyone freaks out, right? But maybe, just maybe, your idea that the things should pan out that way was wrong in the first place.
Yes.
That your expectation that the things should pan out this way, and your confidence, which is really kind of a fake confidence, so to say, or something that you're not aware of, is something that that we have to think about. So I know that everyone tries to focus on predictability in a sense to make sure, like, when is this thing going to be done? This famous question that we get to hear. The truth is, no one knows. There are some ways that we can try to forecast, slice it, count the number of stories or whatever you have, and then you try to project that into the future. But the confidence level as we go into the future goes down exponentially. So we have to be
Yes.
aware of that, because everyone shows that on a linear Gantt chart or whatever. Effectively, it's actually a uncertainty. Is like a confidence belt. The more we go in the future, the exponentially the confidence goes down. So we have to be able to visualize that somehow, to communicate that lack of confidence that we have, which we often fail, I think, to do when we talk about handling product development or and answering that. So I think this idea of on time is often, when people do it, even when they do it on time, it's just a coincidence. But it's hard to prove that, because it already happened, right? So in a sense that it's I most often think it's just a coincidence. That it's hard to predict these things. It's hard to predict when something is going to pop up, when are you going to have some new learnings. The thing is that the more you slice the things, the way, or the more you work in smaller, shorter iterations, what happens is that you get to discover unknowns sooner. So you get to address them sooner. So you cut the wrong path sooner. So you use the rework, etc. So the way of working not guarantees, but gets you to a place where it's more likely that you're going to finish this sooner than otherwise.
This clip was taken from my podcast, The Engineering Room with Dave Farley, a monthly podcast with some of the brightest minds in software engineering. You can find full episodes on all your favourite podcast platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts and Amazon Music. Your support helps us to bring you these regular episodes, so please leave your positive review on your preferred podcast platform to help us to continue to grow and bring you great guests and their insights. Thank you very much for listening.